Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله تبارك وتعالى عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا أما بعد. Today we are commencing Surah al-Mutaffifin. Regarding this surah, there is a difference of opinion whether it was revealed in Mecca or Medina or both. So some Sahaba such as Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu said that this is a Makki surah, and others like Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu said that it is a Madani surah. In one riwayah of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu, it's mentioned that the last 8 verses of this are Makki, and the remaining verses, the opening, the beginning part is all Madani. And some have, such as Jabir ibn Zayd and other Mufassirin, they have said that this was revealed while the Prophet ﷺ was migrating from Mecca to Medina. During the Hijrah it was revealed. Why is this discrepancy mentioned? It is because the issue that the surah addresses in its beginning was a problem in Medina, and it was not an issue in Mecca. It was not raised. And authentic ahadith report that this verse was revealed, the Prophet ﷺ recited it for the people of Medina. The first time it was recited was for the people of Medina. And we'll understand that a little more clearly once we get into the tafsir of it. The surah starts out with a very severe warning. It says wail, and wail is a form of destruction or doom. And in some narrations it is a valley in Jahannam. But most Mufassirin say that wail means doom, disaster. So when there is such a strong word used right at the opening, it means that there is something very serious going on, and there is something that has very serious consequences. So who are the consequences for? Who is this doom and destruction for? Lil-Mutaffifin. For people who do tatfif. Now, Mutaffifin is a noun which refers to someone who is reducing. Tatfif means to reduce. Taffa, it means for something to be light or insignificant. And tatfif is the act of making something lighter or reducing something by a small amount, in a small quantity, not in a huge quantity. Because tafif is something that is insignificant, something small. So tatfif is the act of skimming, in our terminology, skimming a little bit off the top. Al-Mutaffifin are those people who, and the Qur'an describes exactly who it's referring to, when it is time to pay, they will somehow reduce the payment that they have to give. And when it comes time to receive a payment, and give something, so they will reduce the merchandise, lessen the merchandise that they have to give. So when it's time to pay money or to give something, merchandise that they are selling, they'll give a little bit less. When it's time to receive, they'll take a little bit more. This act is called tatfif. So in any transaction, if X amount is due, then if it's due upon me, will I pay it in full or will I give a little bit less? If I give a little bit less somehow, then this is the act of tatfif. And if I am the one who is giving and taking payment, I am giving a little bit less than I'm supposed to give. So the payment that I'm taking is actually more. If, for example, a merchandise of 100 grams costs $1. So it's $1 for every 100 grams. Now, if I am the one giving the merchandise of 100 grams, instead of making it a full 100, I'm giving 90 or 80 grams. And if it's $1 that I have to pay, if I'm the one who's purchasing, then I'll try to get away with 90 cents or 95 cents. Or, on the flip side, instead of paying for 100 grams even, I'll take 110 grams. So this type of dishonesty in weighing, in counting, in measuring, anything in which there is a deception in weights and measures, or in units of merchandise, or in payments, where what is due is being reduced somehow or increased somehow, this is all included in tatfif. The background of this is that when the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina, he saw that the people are involved in this at a large scale. The entire marketplace is filled with this kind of unfair activity, this kind of cheating. So whether it's time to give or it's time to take, people are somehow playing with the weights and measures and managing to give a little bit less and take a little bit more. In fact, one man who is mentioned by name in riwayat, Abu Juhayna, he had two standards of measure. He had one standard of measure for when he was taking merchandise and another standard of measure when he was giving and selling merchandise. And the trade also used to be in kind. In other words, you would be bartering. You would be exchanging wheat for barley, barley for dates, and dates for raisins, and like this. So a lot of volume was involved. Things were sold in volume, and goods were exchanged for goods rather than gold and silver. So this was a very common practice, even though gold and silver were also used, but it is harder to get away with cheating in gold and silver. But in merchandise, a person can play these kinds of games. So the Prophet ﷺ saw this verse, or these verses were revealed, and then everything changed. Somebody asked Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, which people are better and more fair in their weights and measures? So, is it the people of Makkah or the people of Medina? So Ibn Umar said, of course it's the people of Medina. Don't you see what was revealed to them? Do you think after such a staunch and severe warning, do you think they would ever compromise that again? Absolutely not. So this being fair in payments, in giving payments and in taking payments, this is a theme that is repeated in the Qur'an. وَأَوْفُوا الْكَيْلَ إِذَا كِلْتُمْ وَزِنُوا بِالْقِسْطَاسِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. That when you are weighing to give, then make sure you weigh completely, you give completely. And even the scales that you're using, make sure the scale is mustaqim, it's well balanced. Don't tamper with the weights, don't tamper with the scales. And one of the reasons why the punishment came on the nation of Shu'aib alayhi salam on the people of Madian is because they used to do this. Their entire business system, their trade system was made on this. It was taken for granted that I'm going to get cheated. And so anyone who went in with the attitude of, I'm going to cheat the person before they can cheat me. Okay? So what is the habit? الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ. When they weigh عَلَى النَّاسِ, to take a payment from people. When they weigh or when they measure, kail means volume, to measure in volume. Wazn means to measure in weight. So when they are weighing or they are measuring to take from other people, yastawfun, they take completely. They don't leave even a single gram. They make sure they get every last bit. But وَإِذَا كَالُوهُمْ أَوْ وَزَنُوهُمْ, when they weigh, when they measure 4 people or weigh 4 people, يُخْسِرُونَ, then they reduce. In other words, this is the example of, instead of giving the full 100 grams, they're giving a little bit less. They're giving 90 grams, 95 grams. They're skimming a little bit off the top. In English, it's also called curtailing. So they're curtailing. Just a little bit, enough to get away with. And this happens in business today. It's reduced just a little bit. The consumer might not notice, but the person knows that because I'm selling so many units of this, because I'm selling such bulk, I'm going to save this money. That's what the person assumes. يُخْسِرُونَ, so they are reducing. أَلَا يَظُنُّ أُولَٰئِكَ أَنَّهُمْ مَبْعُوثُونَ. Don't these people even think? Don't these people even assume? Forget about knowing or having yaqeen. Don't they even have a little bit of a thought that they are going to be resurrected? أَنَّهُمْ مَبْعُوثُونَ. They're going to be resurrected. لِيَوْمٍ عَظِيمٍ. On a day that is not going to be an ordinary day. It's going to be a tremendous day. It's going to be an immense day. And the most significant thing, aside from all of the frightening things that will happen leading up to that day, we have discussed them in Surah An-Naba, we have discussed them in Surah Nazi'at, we have discussed them in Surah Abasa, in Surah Takwir, and Surah Infitar. All of the surahs that we have covered in this juz, they have described what will happen on that day. But perhaps the most significant thing of that day is يَوْمَ يَقُومُ النَّاسُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. People will have to stand and face Allah Azza wa Jal. The famous hadith of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, مَا مِنْكُم مِّنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا وَيُكَلِّمُهُ رَبُّهُ لَيْسَ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَهُ تَرْجُمَانٌ. Every single one of you will be put in a place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will speak to him directly without any interpreter. Now the person is going to panic. They're going to be in a state of fright. فَيَنْظُرُ إِلَىٰ أَيْمَنَ مِنْهُ. He's going to look to the right. Can I escape from here? فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا مَا قَدَّمَ. All he sees to the right are piles and piles and piles of his own deeds. وَيَنْظُرُ إِلَىٰ أَشْأَمَ مِنْهُ. He'll look to the left. فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا مَا قَدَّمَ. And there also are just heaps and heaps of his own deeds. وَيَنْظُرُ تِلْقَاءَ وَجْهِ. He'll look to the front. Can I escape from here? فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا النَّارِ. Nothing will be there except for the fire of Jahannam. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, فَاتَّقُوا النَّارِ. Save yourself from that fire. وَلَوْ بِشِقِّ تَمْرَةٍ. Even if it is by giving a piece of a date in charity today. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ فَبِكَلِمَةٍ طَيِّبَةٍ. If you don't find even a piece of a date to give in charity, to save yourself from Jahannam, then try to save yourself by saying a kind word, saying a good word. And the Qur'an describes how people will be standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We read about this in Surah An-Naba. And ahadith describe it in plenty of detail. The Sahih ahadith mention how the sun will be brought right above the heads of people. In some narrations, 1 mile away. And the Sahabi who's narrating it, He says, I don't know if it is a mile from the miles of dunya or it's just an indication to show that it's very, very close. And it's mentioned in some narrations that the heat of the sun will be intensified and people will literally be melting under that intense heat. And people will be sweating according to their deeds. Numerous ahadith in Bukhari, in Muslim, in Musnad Ahmad, in vivid detail, that how they will be sweating and the pools of sweat will accumulate around their feet. And depending on what kind of deeds they have to present on that day, or how many sins they have on that day, some people will be standing in sweat up to their ankles, others up to their knees, others up to their hips, others up to their shoulders, and others وَمِنْهُمْ مَن يُلْجِمُهُ الْعَرَقُ إِلْجَامًا, and there will be some that it will be right up to their faces, all the way up. And some people will be drowning in their own sweat. So it is not an ordinary thing. And people will only have that much space where their 2 feet can be placed. There is no space. There is no room. Nothing but fright from all sides. Somebody asked Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, where will the believers be? So he said that they will be sitting on thrones made of gold. And they will have the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cast a shade over them. And they will neither feel the heat, nor will they have to face the devastating weight on that day. The Qur'an in Surah Ma'arij, it talks about that day, مِقْدَارُهُ خَمْسِينَ أَلْفَ سَنَةً, 50,000 years. Some narrations in Tafsir mention that 40,000 of those years will just be waiting for Qiyamah to start. Just waiting. And the remaining 10,000 years will be for the hisab. Settling the accounts of people, taking the accounts from people. And the people that will be drowning in their sweat in that intense heat, they will say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Oh Allah, we can't bear this. Just decide something for us. Even if it's to send us in Jahannam, send us there, but stop this. So don't these people who are playing these kinds of games for the sake of saving a penny here, saving a dollar there, don't they realize that one day all of this is going to be opened? And the gains that they are making through these ways, through these methods, it's going to prove to be nothing but loss. يَوْمَ يَقُومُ النَّاسُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Now, people sometimes think that Qiyamah is far away. We'll see when Qiyamah happens. Because it's not visible, it's not in front of us. That's why these vivid descriptions are given, so that the human mind can process it. When these vivid descriptions are given, then the human mind is compelled to think about it, to imagine it happening. And the more a person thinks about it, applies their imagination to this, and sees it happening, visualizes it in their mind's eye, the greater of a reality it becomes. And we know through modern science, psychology, and medicine, that when you take something and you take that picture and you think about it over and over and over again, it becomes even a stronger reality for you than the things that are actually around you. It becomes more of a reality than what you see, what you hear, what you smell every single day. But the mind has to be applied to it. Don't you see? There are people who are living in lives of suspicions and doubts, and they have all these disorders just because they're imagining things that aren't there, but they keep thinking about it over and over again, but they're interacting with it as if it's right there in front of them. You have doctors here, they will tell you they have these kinds of patients. They're imagining things that are there. It's not there. But you're thinking about it, you're conjuring that image over and over and over again. Allah wants us to do this exercise with these realities. And these things did become a reality for the followers of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the companions and those after them. Now, moving on, the Quran says, Kalla, they need to stop this. This must stop, this type of behavior. And remember that this applies to all transactions in life. This applies to us at work. When we sign a contract to do a certain amount of work for somebody. Let's say there's a tradesman who is contracted to do a certain amount of work for a certain person. What happens around the world? What do contractors do? They'll skim a little bit off. They'll compromise the material. Happens all the time. It happens in every country of the world. They'll compromise the material. They'll compromise the workmanship. They'll reduce the hours and try to get it done. Try to find shortcuts to do it. Even though the person who has hired them is expecting one thing, but this person, again, it's tatfif. They're skimming off the top. Skim a little bit from here, from the materials. Skim a little bit from here, from the workmanship. Skim a little bit from here. And it's all going into it's the same concept. It doesn't have to be physical goods that are being delivered. Similarly, if a person is hired to do a certain job, a certain work, and they're contracted to do a certain work, then they need to make sure that that entire time that they have signed the contract for, that entire time is being used as per the terms of the contract. And if it's not, then to the extent that they are not fulfilling it, that amount, just like this person to give 990 grams and take the money for 100 grams, that 10 grams of money that they took is not halal for them. Similarly, if somebody is using, for example, 1 hour or a half an hour while they're contracted to work for something that they're not allowed to do, it's stipulated that you're not allowed to do this, then the earnings for that half hour, for that 1 hour are not halal for them. The problem with this is that that little bit of khabith earning, that little bit of impermissible earning is going to come in and wipe out the barakah from the remaining 90%. This is the problem. That half hour is going to come in, that half hour of earning is going to come and completely destroy the earnings of the remaining 7.5 hours. So there's something to be very, very careful about. This is why in our aslaf we find those people who, if somebody came to visit them for a personal visit during their work hours, they would make a note of it, keep a log of it. From this time to this time, somebody came for a personal visit. From our shuyukh, there were many who used to do this. And they would send that, if they were teaching at a school or in a madrasa or whatever it was, they would send that to the principal that this time to this time, please deduct this from my pay because I was not teaching at that time. For these 15 minutes, somebody came to me for a personal visit. So, this behavior should stop. Why? Inna kitab al-fujjari lafi sijjeen. The book of the fujjar. Fajr is someone who commits major sins, somebody who commits major mistakes. This person is a fajr. A fasiq is someone who commits an open act of disobedience. So, fisq is an open act of disobedience. Fujur is a major act of disobedience. Now, the book of the fujjar, the book of deeds, in which the actions of the fujjar are recorded, and they're called fujjar not because everything they did was a sin, but because there were some sins that got them doomed, or the majority of what they did were sins, or it could have been one sin that overwhelmed all the good that they did. May Allah say this. So where is it? That book of the fujjar is in Sijjeen. Now, Sijjin is a very powerful word. It's a sigha of mubalagha, which is, it's an exaggerated way of saying sijin, which is a jail. Sijjin, it's like the ultimate jail. And sijin, the literal meaning of sijin or sajin, which is the verb, the masdar of the verb, it means to detain someone for a long period of time in a painful way, in a way that causes extreme pain and difficulty. So Sijjin then is the place where someone is kept for an extremely long time under excruciatingly painful circumstances in Sijjin. So Sijjin, the big jail. So what is this referring to? This is the place where the books of deeds for the sinful people are kept. And according to many mufassirin, this is also the place where the arwah, the souls of sinful people are kept until Yawm al-Qiyamah. So from the time the soul is extracted from the body, what we call death, the soul is taken. Now what happens? لا تفتح لهم أبواب السماء. The angels want to take this ruh up to the heavens. The doors of the heavens are not open for them. They say, go back down, we don't want this ruh here. And there are many ahadith that describe this occurrence. What happens to a person's soul after a person dies? So the angels take it up. Angels of the heavens say no. So they take it down. So this Sijjin, according to some Sahaba and Tabi'is, is under the seventh earth. And some have said it is a place in Jahannam itself. It is a portion of Jahannam which is allocated to keep the books of deeds for these people, and that is where their arwah will be tormented until Yawm al-Qiyamah. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا سِجِّينٌ. What do you know? What will inform you? The literal translation. What will inform you what Sijjin is? What is it that will make you realize what Sijjin is? Kitabun Marqum. The book that has been placed there, this is a book that has been rigorously documented. Kitabun Marqum. Raqama, it means to write, it means to document. This book has been well documented. In other words, this book did not end up there for no reason. The proof of why this book is kept there is inside this book itself. And some have said that kitab here is not referring to that book. It is a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has already been written. The taqdeer of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That this person is going to end up there. So what will happen? وَيْلٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلْمُكَذِّبِينَ. Remember the surah started out with wail, doom and destruction. Today, it may be that the person somehow manages to see some benefits of what they're doing, but on that day there will be nothing but doom and destruction for them. وَيْلٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلْمُكَذِّبِينَ. On that day when these people have to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or on that day when they are taken to Sijjin, there is nothing but woe, and there is nothing but loss and doom for the mukaththibin. So kadhaba means to lie. Kadhaba means to call someone a liar. So mukaththibin are those who say something is a lie. We don't believe such and such thing. So takdhib is mentioned in the Qur'an in different contexts. Some people, they do takdhib of Allah. Some people do takdhib of the prophets. Some people do takdhib of the things Allah has said, such as Yawm al-Qiyamah. And that is mentioned right here. Al-Mukaththibin, alladhina yukaththibuna biyawmiddin. Those people who say that Yawmuddin, the day of recompense, is a lie. They say it's false. Obviously, they believe it's false. That's why they have no fear of what will happen on that day. So whether they actually say it with their tongues, or this is something that they do with their actions, they act so carelessly and negligently that a person who saw their actions would say that this person does not seem to believe in Qiyamah. So, who will refute Qiyamah? Who will refute Qiyamah? Who will have this weakness or this ailment, this illness, this sickness of not being able to believe in Qiyamah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions two qualities. And these two qualities help us to find where the weakness in our iman comes from. So the Qur'an is shifa'un lima fi sudur. It is a cure for the ailments of the heart. Weakness of yaqeen is one of the ailments of the heart. Okay, so I'm having difficulty in connecting with Qiyamah. What could be some of the possible causes? وَمَا يُكَذِّبُ بِهِ إِلَّا كُلُّ مُعْتَدٍ أَثِيمٍ. A person with two qualities will be the only one who will reject Qiyamah. In other words, they will not affirm it the way it needs to be affirmed. They will not believe it and believe in it the way it deserves to be believed. People who have two qualities. One is i'tida. I'tida is going beyond limits, going to excesses. And excesses are considered in those things that are permissible, that are halal. But this person does not stop at what they need to do. They'll take it and they'll just let that thing overwhelm them until it occupies the space that was supposed to be left for the commandments of Allah. I'll give you an example. Earning is halal, provided that the mode of earning itself is halal. Okay? So a person is earning. Now, a person earns, everyone needs to earn, but this person is earning in such a way that they have no time for salat. They'll say, look, earning halal rizq, it's a duty. Absolutely, it's a duty. But within limits. It does not supersede every other duty. There are other duties that you must uphold while you are earning that rizq. So salat is not something you can compromise just because of rizq. So that would be an example of i'tida. I need to eat. Okay, you need to eat. But this person is not differentiating now between consuming halal and consuming haram. I just need to eat. This person is going beyond the limits. Taking a halal concept and going beyond the limits in that, this is i'tida. When people have this habit of going to excesses, one of the immediate responses of that or consequences of that is that their connection with akhirah starts to break. Doubts and suspicions regarding Qiyamah will arise in their heart and slowly overtake their hearts. The second quality, a person who is involved in ithm, and that is that thing which itself is impermissible. Engaging in those acts which themselves are impermissible. So wherever i'tida, taking halal things but blowing them out of proportion and taking them to excesses, or engaging in acts which themselves are unlawful, a person who does this will have difficulty connecting with Qiyamah. And to the extent that they engage in these two types of behavior, or they have these two qualities, that will be the extent of how much they reject Qiyamah, or how difficult it is for them to believe in Qiyamah. So when we hear the talks of akhirah and we have difficulty in relating to it, connecting with it, visualizing it, we don't feel close to it, it's time to come back and examine myself. What excesses are there in my life? Where am I going beyond the limits of Allah? And what acts am I doing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like? And someone who has tawfiq to do this, Allah's help is with them. A person who does not have tawfiq to do this, it goes to the next level. And what is that? إِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِ آيَاتُنَا قَالَ أَسَاطِيرُ الْأَوَّلِينَ. If a person does not come back to themselves and fix this problem from these two roots, then a time will come when all the talks of akhirah and qiyamah will seem like a joke. So what will happen? When our verses, Allah Azza wa Jal says, when our verses are recited to them, what do they say? They say these are asatir. Asatir is the plural of ustura. And ustura means a fable, a make-believe story, a tale. Satara means to write something down. And ustura specifically are those stories that don't have any basis. No one really believes in them. No one will ever use those stories to learn a lesson or a moral or to make a decision. That's what ustura is. Say, that. Asatirul awwaleen. These are tales of the old people. Tales of the people of the past. Oh yeah, these you'll find in many books. These you'll find in storybooks. These are just tales and fables. They're all made up. There is no reality to any of these things. Like today people read about mythology. They read about myths. That's how some people read the descriptions of Qiyamah. They say these are all myths that are made up by mankind. Made up by certain people. So that's what will happen if a person does not come back and fix themselves at the root. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes this now. Kalla. This behavior is incorrect, unacceptable. What has actually happened? Bal rana ala qulubihim ma kanu yaksibun. It's not that the stories are made up, but their own deeds have now overpowered their hearts. Their deeds are now impacting their hearts. Rana. Rain is for something to be overwhelming, for something to cover something. Rana and ghana, both of these words are used in Arabic for this. In the hadith of Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّهُ لَيُغَانُ عَلَىٰ قَلْبِي. That my heart starts getting affected by the environment, by these people that are coming to see him, these people that are bringing all of this, their disbelief and their shirk. And he says, my heart, it gets tainted from these things. It gets affected from these things. وَإِنِّي لَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ كُلَّ يَوْمٍ أَوْ فِي كُلِّ يَوْمٍ مِئَةَ مَرَّةٍ. So I also make istighfar every day 100 times. And in one riwayah, وَإِنِّي لَأَتُوبُ إِلَى اللَّهِ مِئَةَ مَرَّةٍ. I make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every day 100 times. Because even my heart gets affected just from the people carrying these things. So what about the people that are doing those actions? Rana ala qulubihim ma kanu yaksibun. Their own deeds, what they used to do, have now tainted their hearts. So this is where things begin. The hadith of Tirmidhi and Ahmad and others mentions that when Ibn Adam commits a sin, commits a mistake, nukitat fi qalbihi nuktatun sawda. A black dot appears on their heart. If the person makes tawbah, suqila qalbuhu, the heart is once again purified. But if the person doesn't make tawbah, then what will happen? They will be inclined to commit that same sin again, or wal-iyadu billah, an even worse sin. And then the darkness starts accumulating in the heart till a time comes when a person is no longer able to tell right from wrong, good deeds from bad deeds. It's all the same. It's all just whatever it is, whether it's for the sake of enjoyment or whatever the case may be. They're unable to differentiate. And then once the heart becomes dark, then the next step is the heart becomes hard, and then the heart becomes sealed. And a time comes when it is no longer receptive to the message of truth. It is no longer receptive to the reminders, to the advices. It's no longer receptive. The doors have been closed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us. So this is where things start. كَلَّا إِنَّهُمْ عَنْ رَبِّهِمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ لَمَحْجُوبُونَ. What will happen on that day? That there is no doubt that on that day these people will be veiled from their Lord. Veiled from their Lord. What does that mean? That a hijab will be erected and they will not be able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The believers, وُجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاظِرَةٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. There are some faces that will be a light shining, نَاظِرَةٌ, and they will be looking towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give this as a bounty, as a gift to the believers. He will allow them to see Allah Azza wa Jal. But those who do not believe in Allah or believe in the message of Allah, at that time a veil will be drawn, a hijab will be drawn. They will not be able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that would be one of the greatest torments for them, that they are deprived of this. Then what will happen once they are veiled and curtained and blocked off? ثُمَّ إِنَّهُمْ لَصَالُو الْجَحِيمِ. Then verily those people will have to enter Jahim, which is one of the names of Jahannam. So mahjub is from hijab. They will first be barred from seeing Allah, and then they will be pushed and shoved. The Qur'an describes how they will be dragged on their faces and thrown face first into the fire of Jahannam. ثُمَّ يُقَالُ. Once they are thrown there face first, it will be said to them, يُقَالُ, it will be said to them, هَذَا الَّذِي كُنْتُمْ بِهِ تُكَذِّبُونَ. This is what you used to deny in the dunya. Now you're in it. Taste it now. This is what you will have to taste. كَلَّا إِنَّ كِتَابَ الْأَبْرَارِ لَفِي عِلِّيِّينَ. However, the book of the Abrar, this word came before also in the previous surah. Al-Abrar, it's plural of bar. Those who were dutiful, mindful of their duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The book of the Abrar is going to be in Illiyin. And Illiyin, it's from Ulu, just like Sijjin is from Sijin. Illiyin is from Ulu, which means to be high. So Illiyin means the height of heights. The height of heights. So where is this Illiyin? Just like there was a description of Sijjin, where is it? There's a description for Illiyin. Some say that this is by the Arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Others say that this is by Sidratul Muntaha. Others say it is above the seventh sky. Wherever it is somewhere at a very, very high elevation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The books of deeds belonging to the believers, to the pious people, they will go into Illiyin, and their arwah are also going to be in Illiyin. And the Sahih Hadith mentions that the arwah of the believers, they will be kept in like small birds that will be fluttering around Jannah. So through these birds, the believers will be able to see the sights of Jannah and enjoy the beautiful sceneries of Jannah and smell the fragrance of Jannah. So Illiyin is where the arwah and where the books of deeds of the believers are kept. Inna kitab al-abrari lafi illiyin. Wa ma adraka ma illiyun. What would tell you what Illiyin is? How could you possibly know what Illiyun is? Kitabun marqum. That book that will be there has been documented. Or the details of that are in this book itself. Yashhaduhu al-muqarrabun. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that present at Illiyin, present at those books are the muqarrabin, the nearest angels to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yashhaduhu al-muqarrabun. And muqarrabun could also be referring to the slaves themselves. Those people themselves will be there witnessing these books at the maqam of Illiyin. Inna al-abrara lafi na'im, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the final destination of the fujjar. He mentions the destination of the abrar, that verily the abrar, the pious slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are going to be in na'im. So Jannatun Na'im, or the paradise of eternal enjoyment, eternal ease and comfort. Na'im is comfort and luxury. So they are going to be in an eternal luxury. عَلَى الْأَرَائِكِ يَنْظُرُونَ. And there Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to have them seated on ara'ik. Now, ara'ik is plural of arika, and arika is like an elevated sitting place that is surrounded by curtains. It's curtained off. So imagine a high place, and some ahadith If you want to read a very vivid description of the ara'ik of Jannah, then read At-Targhib wa-Tarhib of Allama Mundiri rahimahullah. In the final volume of this book, there is a vivid description of Jannah. Similarly, there is a book by Allama ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah called Had al-Arwah ila Bilad al-Afrah. This also gives a vivid description of Jannah. And in other books as well, in the Sunan of Tirmidhi, there is a chapter describing Jannah. Similar in Abu Dawood and in other books, you will find descriptions of Jannah. So the ara'ik are mentioned because this term is repeated in the Quran. So these are high places, massive places. So it's almost like a platform that you're sitting on. It's extremely comfortable. Some narrations mention that it's going to be so big that you can't see towards the end. And it's going to be curtained. It's going to be curtained. But they will be able to see through those curtains. تَعْرِفُ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ نَضْرَةَ النَّعِيمِ. You will see in their faces the glow of that luxury. So their faces will be glowing, their faces will be filled with light, filled with joy and happiness. So imagine faces that are glowing with joy and happiness, and you can see the comfort and the ease and the luxury on their faces. We will keep it to that for today, and inshallah in the next session, next Monday inshallah, we will complete this surah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to understand what is being mentioned here, to reflect upon it, and may Allah Azza wa Jalla give us the ability to bring these realities into our minds, hearts, and into our lives. There is a great deal of tafsir behind these verses. In these sessions, because the time is limited, we actually give a very abbreviated version. Don't go into too much detail. Otherwise, from the linguistic aspect, there's a lot more that we can talk about. From the hadith perspective, the ahadith that are describing this, we can go into a lot of detail. There are many perspectives that we can give, but because of the time, we have to keep it, we have to keep it summarized. But even this it's a ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be able to talk about and to listen. And if we can contemplate on this and get the reality of it, even this is sufficient for us to get hidayat from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah give us tawfiq. Wa sallallahu wa sallama wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. If we have any questions, we have a few minutes to take those questions.
I've got a couple of questions here. One of them is the verse you just recited earlier, when so can you give us more examples about did that earning halal, but it becomes an excessive? Does that also mean earning through gambling as an example, or earning through usury? Does that fall into that category?
Gambling and usury themselves are sins.
Yeah.
But it does have the element of i'tida in it. But it itself is, the Quran describes it as ithm. يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس وإثمهما أكبر من نفعهما. So these themselves are ithm. They themselves are unlawful and disliked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any halal thing that takes a person out of the boundaries of Sharia, or it makes them neglectful of their duties to Allah or their duties to the slaves of Allah, this is a form of i'tida.
Okay. And the second question I've got is again, this refers back to usury as well at the same time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah al-Baqarah, وَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. I mean, that content itself is clear. So, what I'm trying to understand is the form of riba, the transaction. I mean, I know in the era of Prophet Muhammad we used to deal, people used to transaction of silver and gold. But in this era, we are dealing a different currency. So can you give a comprehensive example in this era where riba forms during transaction? So, for example, if you purchase a product through loan, as an example, and the contract may say the product itself costs 5K as an example, and the profit or the interest of X amount of period costs 500. Therefore, over the end of the period, you will end up paying 5.5. So that's a simple example to that. So at least we can comprehend. Yes, there's a lot of hadiths, but how do we translate that in this?
All of those ahadith are applicable. Whatever is interest today is interest. So if we were to start giving examples, there are thousands of examples, but anything in which there is an excess that is charged over the capital, and that excess is not in exchange for, it is not an exchange of due consideration, it is considered interest. So any excess that is not in lieu of due consideration is a form of riba. So the examples you gave, these qualify as riba. Something is being purchased, and the person who is selling it, the seller says, I'll finance it for you. I'll finance it for you, and you will give me this much interest over this period of time. It's interest. However, if a person sells, for example, a car, and they say that, well, if you buy this car cash, it will cost you $10,000. And if you want to buy it over, let's say, 2 years or 3 years, it will cost you $12,000. And the price has been fixed before. This is not interest. This is not interest. So selling things over a deferred payment model and charging more for that, this does not constitute interest. Interest is when a loan is taken and money, an excess of money is charged in lieu of that money that was lent. Okay? So in the case of house financing, for example, what happens if you go to buy a house through a conventional mortgage? You are applying to a bank for a loan. That bank is going to pay, if the house costs $500,000, the bank is going to forward that amount to the seller in one shot. They have paid that money on your behalf. They have extended a loan to you in the amount of $500,000, and now they're going to charge you interest on that. The bank is going to charge you interest on it according to whatever rate there is, and then based on that, you're paying the principal, you're paying some amount as a principal, and you're paying some amount as interest, and it's just pure interest. So money in exchange for money, more money in exchange for less money, this is interest. Okay? But if you are buying things in a deferred way, then with some conditions, there are some conditions there that have to be met. For example, the price can't fluctuate, there can't be penalties and things like that. The seller cannot make more money under other pretenses. There are conditions for that, but it does not constitute interest. If we were to take another model for the same house, where the person who was selling the house to you, or the third party, not a bank, but let's say another company came in and said, oh, you want to buy that house? Okay, fine. We can finance it for you. We'll buy it for $500,000 and we'll sell you the house for $600,000. And you could pay it over 15 years, for example, or 10 years, the amount of $600,000. You are making a straight sale transaction and a purchase transaction with this third party who has bought the house. Okay? So that's a sale. That That is a sale, it's not interest. The first example was interest and not a sale. It was an interest-based loan. The second was a form of making profit for those people.
So, does Sharia basically give some certain percentage for that? For example, you said $500,000 worth of house. Beside you saying, okay, I'm selling you 650. That's the question one. Second, okay.
Can you clarify that? What do you mean, does the Sharia give a percentage?
Okay, so there is a profit percentage, right? $150,000 a profit. It's, let's assume it's calculated in terms of percentage.
Right.
Does Sharia define some percentage on it, on the profit?
No. The Sharia does not define any percentage. All the Sharia stipulates is that the profit should not be so exorbitant so as to break the backs of people. In our terminology, we should not be ripping people off. It should be an equitable amount, something that is fair.
And extend to this, for example, I have got an institution where I'm just lending the money to different people for, let's assume, for the furniture, right? Can I add some administrative cost into it? Okay, I will give you this on, like, let's say you buy $10,000 worth of furniture. I'll lend you $10,000. I won't charge you some extra, but I will charge you, let's say, $50 administrative cost until you pay this, right? Yani per month, $50 a month.
There are two things there. One is that is there actually an administrative cost involved? That's the first question. It can't be make-believe. There has to be an actual administrative cost that is defined. So if I were to come and ask you, what administrative costs do you have? You say, well, we have to rent this, we have to pay rent, we have this many people that we've hired, we have accountants, we have this is our overhead, these are our administrative costs for giving out these non-interest based loans. Okay? So there has to be an actual cost. The second thing is that the cost, the administrative cost, must be something that once it's paid, it's paid. It can't be something that, for example, there is no recurring administrative cost, there is no monthly administrative cost for giving a loan. There's no such thing. Somebody can make that up, but actually speaking, if the person was to be audited, what's your monthly administrative cost for this? Because the person who's taking the loan is taking the loan on the basis that this is an interest-free loan. So if the interest-free loan is now, it's just the administrative cost is another name for just excess being charged on that amount, it's not fair. But if the cost is justified, and it's actual, it could be implemented. There is a possibility of that. I mention all of these restrictions first because a lot of people are abusing this today. But there are some honest people as well, that they are actually extending interest-free loans. And they actually do have. So we have to keep people honest. Yes, just one more question and then it's going to be a downtime.
So regarding roadside assistance, you've got a company here, RSCB, they provide you roadside assistance, you pay them, let's say around $150 per year or something. So does that comes under a plain insurance or does that come under services?
It's a service.
So
It's a
that kind
service.
of insurance is permissible.
It's not really an insurance. It's basically the thing that we are ready to help you this many times in a year if you have this kind of incident. That's it. It's different from insurance.
It doesn't come under insurance.
Not really. It's more of a service.
Same
What about
rules.
ambulance cover? Is that the same thing? Ambulance cover. I mean, just to call the ambulance.
No, these are also services. These are also services.
Is life insurance permissible?
No, it's not. Unless it's free.
Yeah, so
There are some companies that offer it for free to workers, to their employees. So if your company is offering you life insurance for free, you're not paying anything. You're saying we have this in our package. There's nothing being deducted from you, and it's permissible to take it.
so it would be applicable to the house insurance as well.
House insurance is different. That's not a service. That's insurance. You're insuring merchandise
That's exactly
subject
like
to
life
risk.
insurance.
I won't say exactly, but it is comparable. It should not be taken unless there is a state of emergency or there is a prevalence of harm coming to people. Otherwise, we will. So we'll keep it to that, inshallah. And then next week we can always do some more questions. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdihi, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.